make this video real quick to just get rid of any confusion, because I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube and some people are halfway right. Some people are correct, but they're not telling you all of the differences in one video. So if you are confused about what the differences is, this is going to clarify all of it, okay? Multi-tracks, trackouts, stems, and two-track. What's the difference, okay? Now, you might find people will say trackouts and multi-tracks are the same thing. They're not. They're not interchangeable. They're different, completely different. And I'll explain to you what the difference is. I think what happens is a lot of us nowadays wear multiple hats. So the process of how music is made has changed, and it's like, it's just all gotten mixed up and people don't know what's what, okay? So let me just explain to you what the difference is, okay? Now, the biggest difference that changed, now it's not changed a whole lot. The biggest change is sometimes the producer, the track engineer, and the artist are the same person. And sometimes the producer does not work with the artist and tracking engineer. And that happens a lot nowadays, actually. That's probably the biggest change, especially in like popular music. Oftentimes these people are just getting music from beat makers, right? And so they're not producers, right? A lot of beat makers call themselves producers, and they're not in the same room when the artist is recording. That's the biggest difference between a producer and a beat maker, is the beat maker will not be in the room, and a beat maker has no musical abilities. They don't have that sort of understanding. For example, a vocal producer, they need to know how to sing, because they need to be able to guide the artist how to sing the right octaves, how to sing the different stacks they want them to sing. So yeah, if you can't play an instrument, you can't call yourself a producer, but that's a conversation for another time. If you want me to dive into it, let me know down in the comments. But okay, so we're gonna convert this for modern times, okay? So you got a beat maker, okay? Beat maker will send, a good beat maker will send a 2-track and multi-tracks to the artist, okay? The reason why is multi-tracks are processed tracks, okay? So the sound design that the beat maker made will be committed to these tracks on the multi-track. And so the only thing that you want to be careful when you're doing this is that your reverbs are not committed, unless it's a synthesizer. That's the only time it will be okay to commit reverb, okay? So you don't want to have any panning going on in your beat for the most part, because the mixing engineer is going to want to do most of the panning. You might want to send them that's why you want to send them a 2-track with the panning on it. There's very few times where panning is okay. I think like if you're doing a bounce left-right thing, so like a guitar is going bump, 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 bump in your production, then yeah, you can keep that in, and they'll be completely different tracks from each other. So make that not automated. Okay, if you're going to do that, make sure it's not automated. Make sure that it's something that is on different tracks, left, right, left, right, left, right. Okay. Now, you're going to commit all that stuff. You're going to make a stem for all your reverbs that you want to make sure that they're kind of in. So, for example, if you have guitars with reverb sends, all those sends of reverbs are going to go to one master mix bus for just those reverbs, and you're going to print that master reverb, that stem, okay? And that way, when you send your multi-tracks, they're going to have a fader for the reverb stem so they can hear what you were trying to accomplish with the reverbs. But just in case you didn't do a really good job with the levels across the board, especially with the vocals there now, they can pull it out and then rethrow those reverbs on there and control them better for the final mix, okay? So the modern day beat maker or producer, if you will send multi-tracks and a 2-track to the artist. Now, oftentimes nowadays, the artist is also the tracking engineer, okay? So the artist and the tracking engineer always work alongside each other nowadays. So either the artist has someone hitting record for them, or they're doing it themselves, okay? So they'll load the 2-track in. But sometimes there'll be an issue, right? Because this is the biggest difference. A producer would see the issue, they would know, but a beat maker doesn't because he's not in the room, okay? So a beat maker will send their 2 tracks, and sometimes they only send the 2 track, and this is what frustrates artists so much. And so this is why a lot of artists will say they don't work with producers, because they work with beat makers that don't know what they're doing. So they'll just send 2 tracks, and they'll argue about sending the multi-tracks. They'll always argue about that, because they don't know what that means, okay? So send the multi-tracks with your processed sound, so that when it comes to the recording time for the vocals, that the artist can now go, hey, and the tracking engineer can decide, hey, the bass is a little bit too loud right now while we're tracking, so we want to be able to bring it down, just to bring the bass down a little bit while we're tracking so that we can hear our vocals, and we don't want to do a lot of processing just to track, okay? So what they'll do is they'll do exactly that. They'll get the multi-tracks from you with the reverb stems, and then they'll just kind of volume adjust. That's all they're doing. They're not mixing anything. They're just volume adjusting for the tracking, and then before they send their stuff to the mixing engineer, they'll put everything back at 0, okay? Now, this is very important to understand. Auto-tune and Melodyne, whose job is that? That is between the tracking engineer and the artist before it gets to the mixing engineer. Mixing engineers do not do auto-tune. They do not do Melodyne. There are people that do Melodyne. You got to make sure that your Melodyning is done before it gets to the mixing engineer, okay? So what's going to happen is you and your tracking engineer are the ones who are going to decide what is your sonic sound. So if you have a vocal chain and auto-tune is included in that vocal chain, that is going to be committed to your print, okay? But after that, nothing else happens. This is where you send track outs, okay? Mixing engineers want dry tracks. They do not want you to compress your vocal and make it louder or whatever. If you're doing any boosting, any EQing, that's not going to be sent to the mixing engineer, okay? The most you might do is maybe like a shelve EQ on the way in, and that's okay. But do not go crazy on your EQ when you're tracking before you send it to your mixing engineer. That's his job, to actually be able to hear all the frequencies and fix it, okay? And he wants the most control, because you might be cutting something that doesn't actually need to be cut, because you can cut it somewhere else and it'll sound better. So don't EQ like crazy if you're going to send something off to a mixing engineer. So you and your tracking engineer decide, okay, we're going to commit our auto-tune, all of that, and then you're going to send your track out along with the multi-tracks that were sent to you by the producer to the mixing engineer, okay? Because nowadays, a lot of these guys work in the box, so in order to get the bass sound they want, they are doing a lot of the processing in the DAW, so they need to commit that. That's like back in the day, we would have pedals and stuff on the bass track, compression. We have pedal compressors and all that stuff on the way into our amp that would then get picked up by a mic. So it's no different there. So yeah, you want to commit those as a producer, and then those multi-tracks alongside with your reverb stem, alongside with the dry vocals, dry meaning the vocals that only have the artist sound on them, that only need to be like maybe thrown through some reverb, whatever. You're not going to send your reverbs with your vocal tracks to your mixing engineer. Reverb will be controlled by only the mixing engineer. Now, you should also send a rough mix to a mixing engineer, meaning you're going to send a 2-track with some panning that the artist feels like they want to have for their vocals. If they want vocals to be kind of bouncing around, you can do that. Or something that's easier is just send notes. At every stage, notes should be sent. The producer should send notes to the artist and tracking engineer, and those two should send notes to the mixing engineer as to what they're expecting to hear back, okay? And what they're expecting for you to hear when you get the project, okay? What they're expecting to hear back and what you're expecting for them to hear, and if for some reason something goes wrong. Now, this is where stems go in, okay? And I don't understand how people mix this up when they use a stem separator in their DAW, okay? Stems come from the mixing engineer to a mastering engineer or to an artist, okay? Mixing engineers are the only people talking to two people at the same time, okay? Only people, okay? So they're talking to the mastering engineer and the artist, okay? So this is what will happen, okay? A mixing engineer will do the mix, and then the artist might ask for the stems of the mix because they want playback for live shows. You do not want mastered stems, okay? You want the mixed stems for playback when you're going live. Then the mastering engineer might ask for the stems because they want a little bit more control of each individual track for the final bounce, so that they can bring the bass down a little bit, bring this up a little bit, so they can EQ specifically just all the vocals rather than just dealing with a 2-track and not being able to isolate the vocals and do something. They might want stems to master, okay? And then the mixing engineer will also send him a 2-track the same way he'll send the artist stems and a 2-track. And the only other person that will send multi-tracks is the mixing engineer. Okay, the mixing engineer will send multi-tracks. Why? Once again, multi-tracks are processed, trackouts are not. Multi-tracks from the mixing engineer will be sent to the artist if the artist wants to make their own stems for playback on a live show. So they'll send it, they'll get the multi-track from the mixing engineer, then they'll send it to some guy that they go, I need stems to be made out of these for live performances, so that they can now have all the sonic sounds that they want, split in as many ways so they have more control when they're playing live. Now, if you're still confused, go to your DAW and right-click that thing and do stem separation and see what those tracks look like, okay? What you'll notice is stem separations don't give you a bunch of tracks. It gives you a group track for a certain amounts of things. It depends on how ridiculously good the stem separator is. But if nowadays in Logic, in Studio One, in FL, you can drag a song in there, you right-click it and do stem separation, and now you have the drum break on its own, you have the bass on its own, you have the keys on its own, the vocals on its own. Or the keys will usually be included in the other category in these ones. But yeah. That's if you're confused about stems, use the stem separator. Whatever it separates the stems as, that's what stems actually are. Okay? And if you notice, they're not unmixed, right? Stems are mixed. And if you ever download multi-tracks, you'll notice that reverbs and all of that is there. Okay, because multi-tracks are processed. Trackouts are completely dry. There's no effects on them whatsoever. And you can now go in and mix them yourself. So know the difference, guys, because if you're out there and you're ever going to want to go to the studio, you want to make sure you're sending them the right thing, okay? So once again, multi-tracks are processed, trackouts are dry, stems are group masters, and 2-tracks are stereo tracks, is a stereo track, okay? So it's the final print. And always, always, always send notes to the next person you're going to work over with, because you want to make sure that the workflow is smooth. You don't want them guessing at what you're trying to accomplish. And it makes it so much smoother and saves you money because you don't need to pay for a revision, okay? So if you're going to work with a mixing engineer and you don't want to have to pay for a bunch of revisions, make sure that you're sending them notes and you're sending them maybe a rough mix of panning, or just explain, I kind of want this kind of panning situation going on with the vocals, but usually their best option is give the mixing engineer free range, because when you allow a mixing engineer to get really creative, they can give you a really cool thing back that you would have never heard. Okay, so always remember, mixing engineers are somewhat musicians, and they can have a creative outlet if you give them the freedom to, and they might be able to return something to you that you prefer. Now, some mixing engineers will have a rate for following directions and a rate for them just doing whatever the heck they want. If you let them do whatever the heck they want, they'll probably be happier. Also, sometimes I would talk to a mixing engineer and I say, hey, look, this is what I'm asking for. Give me what I'm asking for, and then mix another one and do whatever the heck you want that I wouldn't ask for, because I want to see what this could be to my limited knowledge, to my limited musical knowledge. Because you might be cocooned into this one idea, and this mixing engineer takes it to a whole nother level that you would have never thought of, and it turns out better than you thought. Okay, so to all the artists out there, I do want to iterate this too. If you're one of those artists that say, I don't work with producers, man, I've had a bad experience. I just want to let you know, FYI, you have not worked with a producer yet. If you feel that way, I guarantee you worked with a beat maker and not a producer. It is a night and day difference. The same way, like a vocal producer, they have to be able to sing to guide you how to sing. You can't be a producer without being a musician. I guarantee you, if you work with an actual producer, it's going to be a different experience. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so how do you know whether or not it's a producer? If they want to work with you, they're going to be there at the same time that you're recording. If they're not there when you're recording, you don't have a producer on your hands, okay? That's simple. All right, guys, I'm Chalita Suave. Hopefully this has helped you out. Welcome to Suave City if this is your first time being here. Hopefully this excludes all confusion going forward, okay? This is the one video you need to watch. Congratulations, you now know the difference between multi-tracks, trackouts, stems, and a 2-track. Thank you, peace.